Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's the last talk of the Congress, my presentation, and I will try to keep it sweet, short, and to the point for the last few which are still standing here, and they are resisting the temptation either for a cup of coffee at the back of the room or the nice sunshine in the swimming pool outside. Okay? Thank you. The reason I choose this topic about the future of emergency surgery in Europe is because this is a huge, massive problem we face, not only in the United Kingdom, but of the whole of Europe and the whole of the Western world. In other words, we have enough surgeons who can use a robot to excise the upper pole of the right adrenal gland, but not enough surgeons who can deal with the bread and butter of emergency surgery in the middle of the night. And also offers an opportunity to show as to how in Europe we deal with addressing these problems and develop models to be able to solve them. Just a couple of words about the organization I'm representing, the European Union of Medical Specialists, which is basically the European Medical Association of the European Union and beyond. And it's consistent of the national professional organizations of the various countries in Europe that they send their formal delegations. It is 56 years young, and it was created just a couple of years after the Treaty of Rome that established what we call today the European Union. It has under its umbrella 37 countries in the EU and beyond, and represents approximately 1.7 million healthcare professionals across the board. It is divided in 42 specialist sections and 15 multidisciplinary joint committees for areas of work which is of interest to more than one section. And it is being run by the Management Council and its democratically elected executive. The main aims of the UEMS is to promote the interests of medical specialists in Europe, promote high standards of care, training and practice, promote continuing medical education and professional development, the big IACME project, for which we have a reciprocal agreement for mutual recognition of credits, you'll be very happy to know, with the Dubai Health Authority, and quality assurance in specialist practice. I have the honor to chair the UEMS section of surgery that is consistent of 37 delegations from national surgical associations that provide to us not only delegations, but also financial and organizational support. Our offices are in Berlin, and we have a very active and interactive website. And something else which is unique within the UEMS, the whole section is divided in 12 surgical specialties, divisions with their relevant educational boards. And we play a game in 5 MJCs. So why we need to have a debate about the future of emergency surgery in Europe? You might say, you have a problem, solve it from the top down. It doesn't work like this in Europe. In Europe, everybody defines in a different way, number one, what is emergency surgery? Everybody has his own ideas as to what are the current problems, and even more, everybody has his own ideas as to what has to be the future. So you need to have this healthy and tedious debate to be able to reach consensus. A few words about the overall European background that you need to know. First of all, in the United States, they recognized 158 specialists and subspecialties. This is absolute madness. I mean, everything under the sun in the States is being recognized as a subspecialty or specialty. In Canada, better than that, 67, and in Europe, we are not that bad, but still, we recognized 55 mutually recognized specialties across the board within the European Union. We have also some new legislation across the board in the EU, which is very strict and very, very specific. The 2011-24 directive, which came into place in October of 2013 across the board, is the most important piece of legislation in the European Union, for the last 4 or 5 decades or so. And it clarifies the rule to access healthcare in any EU country, including reimbursement. The principles of this legislation focus, number one, on quality of outcomes. So they insist that quality of outcomes has to be there, has to be paramount across the board. Secondly, transparency in the provision of healthcare. And thirdly, accountability of healthcare professionals to the authorities about the quality of their outcomes. It gives also a lot of emphasis for the first time to the rights of the patients, and requests for European countries to offer guarantees about quality and security of care. It asks them to provide guarantees about patients being able to make an informed choice about their treatment. And last but not least, allows the European countries and asks from the European countries to offer reimbursement for providing health care for people who are not their own nationals. So, number one, we have this issue of subspecialism. We have the issue of new legislation. We also have in Europe the issue of the aging population, a massive problem. And you can see here, when you see the fertility rates across the board, Europe is at the bottom of the class. We have top 2 children per couple within Europe. And as you will see here, the way it goes, by the end of this century, we will be living about 100 years in Europe, which is amazing if you think about it, but can pose a huge problem in healthcare provision. Persistently low mortality rates lead to an aging society. 50% of the population growth in the EU between 2005 and 2050 will derive from an increased longevity of the population. And if you see in more detail the results of Eurostat, the next decades, the population between 15 and 64 years old in Europe will decrease by 48 million, while the population of those over 65, apologies to many in the audience, but this is what you consider to be elderly, will increase by 58 million. Beyond that, another problem is the problem of overall population growth and immigration. You can see here, the redder you get in the map, the more the population growth. And again, Europe at the bottom of the class, and you can spot very easily the countries where the population is growing very rapidly. The same thing stands here for food shortages. You can see here, the redder it gets, the more the food shortage around the world. And again, Europe has still the blessing of being a pretty wealthy continent. We also have a very sound record in Europe about protection of human rights. And if you put all these things together, look what is the direction of travel for the overall international immigration. People don't go to the United States, they don't go to Canada, they don't go to the developing economies of the East like China or Asia, they come to Europe, to the small and already overcrowded Europe. And on top of this, if you see the second hotspot of immigration around the world is your own country. The United Arab Emirates come second to Europe in attracting immigrants from all over the world. On top of this, another big problem in Europe are the working restrictions. There was a discussion on the first day of the course about the European Working Time Directives and the protection of people from overworking. The Scandinavians have taken this to the extreme, actually. And if you see the time of hours that they're working and the protection they have for their on-call, before and after on-call, is absolutely massive, to the point that they get in their mid-40s or early 50s to be able to get specialized, but to need to protect the right of the workers. Some other interesting factors is that by 2020, not far away from now, 5 years from now, we will be about 1 million healthcare professionals down in Europe in order to be able to provide the healthcare that we need to provide. There will also be up to 35% increase in diabetes, carcinoma of the colon, heart attacks, osteoarthritis, Alzheimer's, dementia, all the diseases of the elderly. So huge, massive problems. And also there will be a big deficit in the amount of money available to us. Only in Germany, they will have a 2 trillion euros deficit in their national social services to be able to satisfy the demands. And if the Germans have a problem, you can imagine what is happening in the rest of Europe. So a series of issues when it comes to the background of provision of healthcare as it stands, to the future challenges that are coming ahead of us, and to the resources available to us. And the way forward does not always coincide with the direction you happen to be going at the moment, and certainly does not coincide with the direction of travel in Europe at the moment. So when it comes to emergency surgery, we did a huge amount of work across the board with all the national surgical associations across Europe to try to reach a consensus. A vast amount of work for which I will present you only the very basic outcome. And the first conclusion was that emergency general surgery has to stay part of the core curriculum and has to be part of the practice of surgeons, especially at the early stages of their careers. And also that emergency surgery has to be provided for specialized surgeons for the patients in their own specialty. But the new thing that emerged from that is that we do need to create not so much a new specialty as a new competency in Europe when it comes to emergency general surgery. The characteristics of this, it must not be this new competency, a quick fix just to fill up the rotas with second-class surgeons and be able to provide emergency surgeries. It has to be done properly with the proper curriculum, pre, peri, and post-CCT training. And also, these people, and this is of paramount importance, have to be provided with equal opportunities for research, education, and overall professional development and recognition. Otherwise, nobody of substance will do it and do it well. The provision of emergency surgeries has to be sound and clear. It has to have a proper organization, leadership. No program develops without the leaders to take it forward. Proper governance, transparency, and accountability. And last but not least, proper integration with the other hospital services, and not to be just an independent unit in the middle of the night to take care of the problems. Has this system worked in any other place? It has worked in Canada, where they were facing similar problems, and they decided to create this extra competency and this extra dedicated service. And they have published a fantastic paper, which I strongly recommend to you to read. And the bottom line of this paper was that the number of cases that were done during daytime, emergency cases being done daytime properly, increased by 132% by the establishment of this service. And so did improve the clinical outcomes. And not only this, because you always need to keep an eye on the budgets in the modern world, this resulted in massive savings in the hospital. And the reason they had massive savings is because they had surgery during daytime done by people who were properly trained, the outcomes were better, people were going home faster and in much better save. So what will be the future in what we have to invest in Europe to be able to achieve that? In Europe, we have two schools of politicians. We have the spending politicians, that they want to throw money into the health service regardless of where they're going to go. And we have the cutting school, which they find an opportunity to cut money from everything they can. Between these two schools of madness, we should have a school of thought and a school of reason about planning and investing. Planning and investing where? Where is it needed? Number one, workforce planning. Our workforce as it stands, it's not fit for purpose for the years to come. We need to recalculate it, and we need to say, especially in emergency surgery, to give the motivation to people and the means to practice it properly. We also need to give the resources to the periphery where it's actually needed. And you can see here a fantastic paper published by the team in Brighton, where they calculated that the investment currently of the National Health Service in the United Kingdom in providing emergency surgery services in the broader Brighton and Sussex area is falling short by £300 million compared to what it is supposed to be. So the investment has to go in the periphery, in the people who fight on the ground. Also, people want to have services closer to home, especially the elderly people who are increasing in numbers, and they're going to have the need for this emergency surgery. They don't want to have it, to travel hundreds of miles to be able to have their operation done. They need to have it as close to home as possible. So instead of investing in robots and God knows what else, which is inevitable in the modern world, we need to focus on that. The European Commission offers fantastic opportunities for creation of networks of collaboration between centers with an interest in various specialties and emergency surgery included. We are promoting the idea of the creation of European fellowships, meaning training of people in emergency surgery between more than one European centers that will be accredited for that. The scheme of mentorship that has to do with the support of surgeons during their journey of professional developments, and of course training of surgeons in developing countries to be able to treat the population.
Prof.
1 minute.
No. Just can we have some, please be quiet, Prof. Sorry for interruption.
Not at all. So how a European project is developed? I always say that a European project is a catastrophe when it comes from the top down and it tries to wipe out, replace, and impose something from Brussels to the nations of Europe. A European project is a great success when it respects, learns, complements, and builds on existing experience across Europe, resulting in consensus of the really highest standards. Reaching consensus is time-consuming, is tedious, it's painful. But when we get it right, we really get it right in Europe. And you can see here one of the masterpieces of European consensus and European technology, this really amazing flying carpet, which is the Emirates' favorite, I hear, with more than 150 orders in place. I would like to thank my good friends and colleagues who have done an enormous amount of work on that, and the audience again for their patience. Thank you.